Okay, here's some Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 gameplay. This footage is from a week ago. I played this match a few days after the Resident Evil showcase. And that game is still on my mind. Largely because I'm interested in the game, but also because of the popularity of the villain of that game. So, the tall vampire lady, as she's popularly known. Her official name is Lady Dimitrescu. She's like 8 to 9 feet tall, fairly conservatively dressed, but elegantly presented vampire lady. Vampire-like lady. We don't actually know if she's a vampire, but she seems to have an affinity for drinking blood, and she does have pale skin.
We've taken control.
In terms of appearance, obviously her height is what stands out, but I would say her kind of like more down-to-earth neighborhood MILF type of look. She seems to be in her, I would say, late 30s to maybe late 40s. She could be decades older or maybe even centuries older, depending on how the story plays out, but especially among gamers, I wouldn't say the internet in general, but among the gaming community, there's been a lot of discussion, fan art, cosplay already. Even at the time, I thought the character was pretty compelling. Just, you don't really see that a lot in games these days. Just to have like a physically imposing, but still kind of human-like female character who plays a central role in the plot. If not as like the main character, or maybe as like an ally, mentor. In this case, she seems to be the primary villain. And it got me thinking about other games that are somewhat related in terms of play setting. So this map here, the Mialstor Tank Factory, it's set in Eastern Europe. It appears to be inspired by Russia, even though the developers don't actually call it Russia. They call it like a fictional country, Urzikstan, I guess. It's very clearly inspired by Soviet-era architecture. You got Soviet-era tanks. Reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 3, the Groznyj Fortress. That game takes place in 1964 in Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union. Even has like what appears to be the same tank model featured in Groznyj. There's a sweet sniper shot there. And that game is prominent because the main antagonist of that game is like a mature, middle-aged woman who is attractive, but she's not like a sex object. That's not like the defining characteristic of that character. So she's very similar to Lady Dimitrescu in that sense. And like, if you take the character out of context, just in isolation, she's really not that unique, really. I wouldn't even say that attractive. Like, I would say she's a more handsome character as opposed to beautiful. Like, she kind of looks like someone you could actually see in real life. Like, height notwithstanding, her body proportions are still reasonable. If she were like 6 feet tall, 5 to 6 feet tall, I mean, she would be kind of a real character, and minus the pale skin, the really pale skin, and the giant claws, but her body proportions are not overly exaggerated, and that's what kind of is appealing to the character. She's not appealing about the character. She's not just some like hyper-sexualized, idealized representation of what people think female characters should be. She's older than, I would say, most female video game characters. What a great sniper shot. I kind of threw that player off by just kind of waiting a bit for reappearing. And that kind of, just this whole snowy Eastern European setting kind of got me thinking about Hitman as well. So the latest Hitman game was released earlier this week. And there is a connection because the main character, Agent 47, has Eastern European origins. I actually forgot that he was born and raised in Romania, and that's the apparent setting of Resident Evil Village. And like Lady Dimitrescu, Agent 47 does have a pretty memorable visual design. Obviously the bald head, the barcode tattooed on the back of his skull. He's usually got an expensive suit, red tie, those dual silver ballers. If he's not sporting those, and he's got like a sniper rifle. But I think overall, even though that franchise is close to 20 years now, I mean, I think the character is not that compelling. Like, even though he's got like a memorable design, even though there's been 2 major motion pictures, I think the fact that those 2 movies, those Hitman movies, haven't really been successful, it just kind of shows that the character has pretty limited appeal outside of the video gaming world. And even among gamers, like, that series has never been as popular as Resident Evil or the Metal Gear series or even the Modern Warfare series. Although, to be fair, the Modern Warfare series is not as character driven as those other franchises, but the character by design is this amoral, like Agent 47 that is. He's just this amoral, emotionless, nondescript in terms of demeanor and actions. Obviously, if you saw like a muscular, bald-headed, barcode tattooed person in real life, he'd stand out like a sore thumb. But within his universe, he's just kind of like a blank slate. And again, it makes sense for him to be that way in his universe in order to be the assassin, the mythical, vaunted assassin and saboteur. But as a character, as a central character of a interactive storytelling medium, that's not what you want. Like,
Enemy near Main Street. Allied cruise missile away.
I don't want to play as that character. Not anymore. Like, the late 90s to mid 2000s, that was a period when anti-heroes like Agent 47 were popular. And that was the period in which I played those Hitman games. I played a little bit of Hitman 1, Hitman 2, Contracts, Blood Money. I played them again for the HD trilogy. But the newer Hitman trilogy just doesn't interest me at all. And that's largely because the character. I think the gameplay engine is outdated, but just that series has never been and will never be as popular as those upper tier franchises. You know, like Modern Warfare. It's multiplayer focused, but you've got Captain Price, you've got Ghost, to a lesser extent Soap McTavish, characters whom are well loved among fans because they exhibit qualities that people want to have, even if they don't get to play as all of those characters. Whether or not Lady Dimitrescu will have enduring popularity remains to be seen, but for the time being, she, as like a prominent character, is a breath of fresh air because she's so different than the norm for female video game characters. And that's what you need. If your main character isn't interesting and compelling, then at least try to make your villain interesting and compelling. And make them interesting and compelling by giving them desirable qualities, or at least qualities that are different from their contemporaries.